Roger and Bob rode out that day till that logjam got in their way. They got lucky on Bluff Creek that day. Oh, they got lucky when she walked away. Roger and Bob rode out that day.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with Buggs Adamson, and I wanted to talk with him and have him recount for you his Bigfoot sightings that occurred in the early 1970s in Mendocino County, outside the town of Philo, on some private property. So Buggs, I wanted to ask if you could tell us about what happened the night you guys first saw the Bigfoot.
All right. Well, we just ate dinner. We had come in from hunting and sitting around just kind of BSing and relaxing after dinner. And my brother kept hearing something out in the front yard down towards the creek, and it kept bothering him. We were just doing our regular stuff, not paying much attention to him, and finally he kept going back and forth to the window, and he says, "There's something down there." He says, "I'm going to go out there and see what this thing is." And anyway, he started over to the door. The doors on the cabin there, both of them are on the sides of the building, so he walked over the door, and it was close to where I was at, and where I had my bunk set up and everything. And anyway, he walked by and went to the door, and he looked out the door, and kind of surprised look on his face, because nothing ever scared Harry. Nothing scared him. He's a pretty rugged guy, and he yelled at me, "Buggs, get the gun." And I went, "What the crud?" And I grabbed the 30-30, I went over there and then took a look out, and this guy was coming up out of the creek bed. And I took a look at that thing, and I ran over and I grabbed my 30-06, put the 30-30 down, and I went back to the door. And when the other brothers and our buddies seen what was going on, then they all come running up there to see what it was. And by then he stepped up out of the creek, and he went through two big redwoods that were there, went in between them, and then was starting to walk across our parking lot. And as he started across the parking lot, I kind of got shoveled out into the driveway there. I went out the steps, and I took my eyes off him because I didn't want to fall down with the gun. And when I got back, well, he'd already crossed the parking lot and was starting up the hill. And I did see when he was going across the parking lot, he just kind of glided. He just like he flowed across there, and huge strides. And he turned sideways. He turned his head sideways, but he had to turn a lot of his body sideways because his shoulders were so massive. He couldn't see us over his shoulders. He had to turn sideways and to look at us. And what I didn't see, my brothers told me later, was he went across the parking lot, and while I was going down the steps to get out in the parking lot, so they had room to look at the door there, he backed up against the trees that were where the hillside started. Right at the end of the parking lot, there was a real steep grade, and he backed up against the brush, and they said he almost became invisible. He just about disappeared from sight. But they knew, he knew that they still knew he was there. So he turned around and then just walked up the hill, and that hillside is just old baked red rock and manzanita and poison oak and tan oaks and leaves everywhere, and it's steeper than a 45. So it's, you know, our spring was up there, and we had a rope to get to our spring. We'd pull ourselves up there on the rope, and this thing stood straight up and down and walked right up that hill. Only a few steps and he was completely gone, but there was no sound whatsoever.
Can I ask you to describe it physically, how tall it was, how big it, just give us a description of the creature?
Well, we all agreed that it was 9 foot at least, and I think he was 10. It was like looking at a basketball rim. He was really tall. He was way over 7 foot. Because I just had dinner with Nate Thurman just before that, and it would take 5 or 6 of Nate's to make this guy.
In terms of the bulk of it?
Yeah, and the height too. He was way higher than Nate.
What about the hair? Did you get a look at how long it was or what color it was?
No, he just seemed kind of brownish color, but he's I don't know, he had what I would say for hair is he looked like, it's like a dog. If a dog is real healthy and it has a real shiny coat and it's real glossy and everything, whatever this guy was eating, he was eating a lot of it and it was treating him good. And he looked like, you know, just like he was well kept. He didn't look unkept. And the hair was smooth, and you know, you could see the muscles just rippling under the hair.
Now,
it was pretty long, but still, though, you know, it wasn't great big patches per se.
Right.
But it was just overall kind of a long lane.
You described the parking lot, and for the viewers who are going to watch this, I want to mention this was at a remote location in the mountains where Buggs' father had bought property in the forest of Mendocino, the Coast Range, Mendocino County, and had cleared an area. You guys built a cabin, house, you know, mountain house, and what you call the parking lot is a leveled area where your vehicles were.
Yeah, like my dad, he wouldn't build nothing on a leveled area. He said that's the wrong way to do it. And we just dug pillars down in the hillside, and the house was built on pillars down to bedrock, and then so there wouldn't be no earth sliding, you know, during the rains. It left the hillside natural. But in the side, coming up the creek, it was kind of washed out there. So they just come in, and it was fairly level anyway there. And then we built on the side hill, but he took our old ollie, and we had a little crawler there, and we graded it all down. And it's like a little D2 cat. Mm-hmm. And we made a nice level parking lot.
Well, from where it came out of the creek, I wanted to ask you, from the front door where your brother first spotted it, what distance would you estimate it was from you guys when you were observing it? How far away?
It come up from the house there. The door to where he come up out of the creek was probably 20 yards.
Wow.
And then where he walked across the parking lot, it I don't know how far across there that would be. I'd say maybe 30 yards across the parking lot. But when he come out of the creek, he walked straight across the parking lot, which brought him about 10 yards from the entrance of the house.
10 yards,
so
30
he
feet.
Actually
wow.
was just a little bit, maybe a little bit more than 10 yards from the door where everyone was standing. So
And
we
I know,
got a good look at him.
we haven't also said for the viewers here, this was what day, what time of day this was? Do you recall? I guess what time of year too?
Well, it was during deer season, so probably during August. It was the coastal deer season, and it was in the evening. We made evening hunt, and we got back after dark, and that time of the year the days are pretty long, so it was probably, and we ate, so heck, that would probably put it around 11 or maybe almost 12 o'clock at night.
And again, 1970.
Yeah, I'd say my brother Jerry was there, and Jerry just got back from Vietnam. He'd only been back a week, and he was there with us.
So I'd ask also this typical follow-up question: did you smell anything?
No, there was no smell. The only thing you could smell were our mom and our aunt and them had been baking bread all day down in the creek, and that's where he was rummaging around down there in barbecues and things, and that got Harry to wonder what the heck was banging around down there.
Right.
Because he wasn't too quiet. I could hear it, but I never paid no attention to it.
But your mom and the women had been baking bread in the barbecues.
Yeah.
You said it put out an odor like a bakery, huh?
Yeah, they had us enough homemade bread there, some goodies to last us a whole weekend there while we were working.
So, trying to think of no smell. You mentioned no sound. It glided across.
Yeah.
Didn't bob up and down as it strode.
No sound. There was no smell.
Anything else you can add? This was your first encounter, first time ever seeing one of these. What was going through your mind? What were you thinking you were seeing?
Well, I knew what I was seeing, and of course the brothers did too. They said that was a Bigfoot. I mean, it couldn't have been nothing else with the huge size of the thing. He was thick.
Yeah. So you had heard about stories about Bigfoot before?
Yeah, before, but never paid him much mind.
And for the viewers too, you're a lifelong hunter, outdoorsman, you'd say?
Yeah, I'd say pretty much lifetime.
Well, great. I think again, excellent observations, and hopefully in time I'll be able to speak with one or more of your brothers too as well. But I know from speaking with you, and I've known Buggs for close to 2 years now, that Lee's accounts are outstanding. Great observations at an amazing distance. I guess one question I'd wonder is, what was the lighting like? What was illuminating where he was walking?
Well, it was dark, and the only illumination really was from the lights on in the cabin.
And the front door was open, light was pouring out that way.
There was also I think there's four big picture windows on that side.
Okay.
That before the door. So when he come up out of the creek, he was lit up enough that you could see him coming up out of the creek.
Yeah.
And if I'd have looked long enough, I think I could have seen some features on his face.
What was the embankment like? How high to come up out of the creek to the parking level?
Probably about 12 feet. I'd say about 12 feet, and then it was at a slope. The creek would have been back. It would have been 12 foot or so down,
mm-hmm.
and then about maybe 25 or 30 feet on a slope.
Mm-hmm.
And he just walked straight up between the two big trees.
Well, I know when we spoke before about this, and this goes to these creatures, the Sasquatch, having beyond human capabilities. It's mentioned in Dr. John Bindernagel's second book. But what I wanted to point out for the listeners too is when it walked up this slope, you described to me that you and your brothers, people in very good shape, wouldn't have been able to walk on two legs up this slope. Can you touch on that, how it was slippery because of the leaves?
When he come up the creek, you could have walked up that one. That was an easy slope. But the other one where we had our spring, that was above 45-degree angle.
And that's where he exited?
That's where he exited. And he walked straight up and down. He didn't lean forward or backwards or go down on all fours. He just walked straight up and down, straight up the hill. I mean, to stand straight and walk straight up the hill, that's pretty hard to do. I mean, you know, even an old logger or something like that couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And we had whoop. You okay, Tom?
Yeah. One last thing I think about this first sighting I'd like to ask you is, you mentioned that when you got kind of pushed out of the door with the gun out the front door, your brothers were watching it, and when you saw it again, they described to you how it just calmly turned its back and stepped backwards into the foliage and blended right in, almost disappeared from view. That's an amazing
There's one more
feature.
over there.
Yeah, that's an amazing feature, I think, of the Sasquatch, that this ability to blend in with the forest.
Yeah, I was stepping out the step, and it wasn't a high step or anything, but it was kind of long, and I didn't want to fall with a loaded gun. So by the time I got down there, they said he'd walked over to where all the trees and the brush started at the end of the parking lot, and then he just turned his back to the trees and put his arms down, and he just about disappeared, they said. And he stood there for a minute or so, and then he just, not quite a minute, he just stood there for a while and then turned around. And then when I seen him, he'd already turned around, and then he just walked straight up that hill.
Yeah.
And we had our spring up there, and we had a rope tied to a oak tree up there, to a big tan oak, and we had a rope there with knots tied on it, so we could get up to the spring. In order to walk up there, we had to use that rope and pull ourselves up to the spring to put our hose in every time the deer or something knocked the hose out.
The same hill that it just walked up.
Yeah, and it just strode up and never made a sound. It never made a single sound.
Well, I think we'll stop here, and I want to thank you for your time. We're out today on the winter solstice at Pillar Point Harbor, just north of Half Moon Bay, California, and we're gonna video 2 will now recount a second encounter of 4 that Buggs had on this remote property in Mendocino County in the early 1970s. So this is Tom Yamron for the Alliance of Independent Bigfoot Researchers, and I want to thank Buggs Adamson. Thank you. Okay.